Welcome back to the Ben Mulroney Show. And it's really funny how every Friday we have the Friday edition of This Week in Politics. It's what a coinky-dink. And welcome to the team. Let's say hi to Chris Chapin, political commentator, managing principal at Upstream Strategy, and Warren Kinsella, former special advisor to Jean Chretien and CEO of the Daisy Group. All right, you're out there, Warren, getting your steps in. Meanwhile, I just had a bunch of Timbits a few minutes ago. I'm not feeling very good about myself. Where are you?
I'm in Nelson, BC, so that's the Kootenays behind me. I'm heading into the interior, and so if we talk about BC Ferries, I've got lots of actual real-life examples to talk about.
That's right. Well, before we do, this was a story that popped up late in our show yesterday, so we really didn't have a chance to get into it. I'm very glad to have you both here to talk about Sean Fraser's letter, the statement of Canada's intervention before the Supreme Court of Canada, trying to get the Supreme Court to add clarity to the use of the notwithstanding clause by the provinces, I suppose. So there's a couple of ways I want to attack this. And the first way is are they tipping their hand, Chris? Is this the priority of the justice minister, when a lot of us were hoping we'd see bail reform, we'd see criminal justice reform? Instead, this is what's top of mind for them?
Yeah, Ben, it's a good question. I actually don't know if I have the answer to that. I found it perplexing. I feel like this has really come out of nowhere. I mean, I know what they've signaled it as is, pushback on Bill 21 in Quebec. I just find the timing very interesting. It's not something Mark Carney or the Liberals spoke about whatsoever on the campaign trail. They certainly didn't bring up this, anytime they were campaigning in Quebec throughout the last election. So, I think I personally don't agree with it. I think it's an overstep, and I think the notwithstanding clause is very important to keep our country together and the role it plays in giving some power back to the provinces within our Constitution. But I find the timing of this announcement very, very odd.
Yeah, Warren, maybe you can add some context to this, because this might be a very simpleton comparison, but it feels to me like the Clarity Act 2.0.
No, and I don't want to disagree with my conservative friends, but I've noticed a lot of conservative friends saying how horrified they are by this, and we should leave charter rights. And
tell us what people shouldn't be horrified.
No, I'm saying they shouldn't be. I don't understand why people are. And, conservatives suddenly concerned about the Charter of Rights and Freedoms for the first time ever. But anyway, going back to the beginnings of the Charter of Rights and Freedoms, and it was, a request made by Premier Lougheed from Alberta to have it in there as a safety valve, the non obstante clause, as it's called in Latin. And, that was the condition to get all the provinces to sign on. The problem became, going back to when your dad was there and my guy Chretien was there, it was abused by the provinces, most particularly the province of Quebec, to use it to trample on the rights of minorities. That's the problem with Section 33. Now, they have to go back every 5 years to renew it, but Quebec's had no hesitation in doing that. It basically is an abomination at the center of the Charter of Rights. We don't really have a constitutional protection for minorities as long as you have Section 33 there. So I think all of the Carney guys are doing is saying to the Supreme Court, can you tell us what the guardrails are for this particular section? Because we think it's possibly being abused, and I think that's a reasonable question to ask.
Look, I guess they can ask it if they want, and then they can do what they want. But Warren, a majority for the Liberal Party goes through Quebec, and if this somehow has the Supreme Court comes down and circumscribes a province's ability to use the notwithstanding clause, I don't see how this doesn't stick to the Liberal brand for a very long time in the province of Quebec. This is a big gamble.
On that, I agree with you. But that to me testifies to how legitimate it is. There is for sure a significant political risk to the Liberals in the Liberals doing this.
Yeah.
because in Quebec, it is not going to be popular. Whether it's the Parti Québécois or the Quebec Liberal Party, they're not going to like it, and they're probably going to be interveners in the reference case. But it's just, I should emphasize that, it's just a reference case. It's not an actual case. It's what governments in Canada are allowed to do, federally or provincially, go to the Supremes and say, hey, what do you think? How will you rule on this if it actually ever becomes a real case?
Yeah.
And I think that's a prudent thing to do.
Mr. Chapin, you're shaking your head a little bit there.
Well, I mean, I feel like it's a slippery slope we seem to be on in this country, that we leave so much up to the Supreme Court. I do think that there should be some guardrail, that Parliament's still supreme. And I think taking that away, asking the Supreme Court to rule themselves whether they should essentially be the supreme body in this country, I think is dangerous.
Yeah, I did not see this coming yesterday, so I haven't had a lot of time to think about it. And I just I don't know where it came from. I don't know what the genesis of it was. I don't know where the pressure was mounting on the government to do this so early in this parliamentary session, when it was not on anybody's radar. And this is a good faith question. Where did this come from? And if this is the beginning of the slippery slope, as Chris just said, there's no way it's not going to be traced back to, if one day there is an inability for a government to use the notwithstanding clause in any way that they used to before, it'll be traced back to this letter, which is signed by the Liberal government. And they're going to have to answer for it in Alberta and in Ontario and in Quebec, where it is used the most. All right. So this is the beginning of this conversation. Clearly, we're going to come back to it because I still have more questions than we got answers. Let's talk about what has happened over the past few days with so many Liberals of great experience, especially since 2015, jumping ship. They're either jumping ship or they're being thrown off the ship. We're talking about Chrystia Freeland, Jonathan Wilkinson, Bill Blair, and Stephen Guilbeault, all being moved out of either seats in the House of Commons or a position within the government to then take some positions in the diplomatic corps. And again, I don't expect to see this at the beginning of a parliamentary session. This is normally something that happens when a government's long in the tooth. Am I wrong, Warren?
No, you're not wrong. It's, they're not just leaving government, they're getting some pretty soft landings. So you're getting a lot of people, and it's what, all political parties always say, we're not going to stick our partisans into the public service or into the diplomatic corps because, we value those systems and, it should be responsible, experienced people. Well, here we go, Wilkinson and Guilbeault and Blair, getting soft landings and big diplomatic postings abroad. So they're kind of doing what they said that they wouldn't do. So that's disappointing. Next question you got to ask yourself is, are they the right people for those jobs? Bill Blair to me is a bull in a china shop going back to the G20. So he's not somebody cut out for a diplomatic appointment. Wilkinson, same thing. All he did for the time he was minister is alienate the energy industry. Guilbeault was even worse. The only one I think who would actually be a welcome appointment and an important appointment at this time at the United Nations is David Lametti, a very capable guy, close to the Prime Minister. And he has that kind of persona. He's got that kind of patience for the diplomatic world. So that one is okay. The rest of them, I think, are duds.
I'm trying to figure out the sequence of events. Did these guys run in the last election knowing this was going to happen? Are they being asked to leave because there are some young Liberals that they want to put in these safe seats that they can then bring into a government with some new, fresh blood? I don't know what's going on, Chris.
I don't either. I don't pretend to have a line of sight into the Prime Minister's office. I think some of them make sense to a certain extent. I think there's something to be said about putting your mark, in Prime Minister Mark Carney's case, I think finally putting...
Actually, you know what, Chris? I apologize. I'm going to ask you to stick a pin in that. We're going to pick that up as soon as we get back from the break. We've got much more with our panel. It's This Week in Politics, Chris Chapin and Warren Kinsella. We're going to talk about that as well as what to make of our Prime Minister's trip to Mexico. So there's that and a lot more to come on the political panel right here on the Ben Mulroney Show. Welcome back to the Ben Mulroney Show, and welcome back to our good friends Chris Chapin and Warren Kinsella for our Friday edition of This Week in Politics. Chris, before the break, you were making a point, and I will allow you to make it now.
No, listen, Ben, we were just talking about, the Mark Carney's appointments of these positions. And I think there's something to be said about him certainly putting his stamp on some of these appointments around the world. I completely agree with Warren. The David Lametti one makes a lot of sense. Bill Blair being the ambassador or in the High Commission in London is certainly a perplexing one. I think, and I mean, we might still get to the topic, but I think the more interesting one certainly was Chrystia Freeland's what I would call far less soft landing. And I think that's the more interesting thing that hasn't been talked about, even though I think they've creatively and well-timed these appointments to put the more respected people in those offices. I think her appointment in Ukraine is far more perplexing.
It's the sheer number of people all leaving at the same time so quickly after an election. That's what I don't get. I am trying to square that circle because were these discussions happening prior to the election? If so, why did they run? Because now we've got 4 or 5 by-elections that we're going to have to gird for. So to me, there's just still a lot of questions. None of them bad. I just want to know the sequence of events. That's it. All right, let's go. Go. Sorry, Chris, go on.
No, I couldn't agree more. I think that there's certainly some very perplexing appointments. I mean, you think about, somebody like Nate Erskine-Smith, who was convinced to run again. He clearly thought he was getting back in cabinet, for example, and he was left out. So, I mean, there's been very, very bizarre decisions by the Carney Liberals since they took office.
Well, one thing that has been consistent is our Prime Minister saying that we have to go out there and we've got to diversify our trade. And he's made some trips to Europe, and now he's gone south of the United States to our trading partner in Mexico to solidify the trade we have and expand the trade that we don't. What's your sense of how it's been going?
Looking at Carney and President Scheinblum, it feels like I'm watching two kids at lunchtime who've been picked on by a bigger kid. They're trying to forge an alliance about how to ensure their lunch money doesn't get stolen anymore. How durable are these alliances? Like in the case of Mexico, we know when Trump came back at us in yet another tariff wave a few weeks ago, Mexico was given a get-out-of-jail-free card and was given 90 days to negotiate further with the United States with no penalty. So, that's the problem with these alliances, particularly in the Trump era. They're really not worth the paper they're printed on. We have a USMCA with the United States of America and Mexico already, and Trump has violated it with his bogus claims about fentanyl or whatever. So, to me, it really comes down to not the deal, not the piece of paper, comes down to the leaders.
Yeah.
I regard Carney and Scheinblum as more stable type leaders. So probably something will come out of it.
Yeah.
I guess we'll have to see what it is. But our level of trade with Mexico, as we all know, is nothing like what it is in the United States.
No. But Chris, any option, if it's a zero-sum game, if the trade that we're not doing with the States, we have to do elsewhere. And so if there's an opportunity to expand trade with Mexico, I think it's incumbent upon our Prime Minister to take that opportunity.
I suppose, Ben, I think the challenge, and Warren summed it up perfectly at the end there, I think our exports are something like 1%, maybe 2% of our total exports are to Mexico. We really do not do that much trade with them. And so I think it's a box, I suppose, Prime Minister Carney had to check. I thought it was very interesting when I saw the news, though, because, I mean, if you look back to kind of the start of when things all really started to fall apart from a trade perspective with the United States, the one person I think President Trump kind of stood in, I won't say in solidarity with, but he thought was very strong on trade was Mexico, and often used us as the counterbalance and said, Canada's so bad with us on trade. And so I thought that was very interesting, a very interesting choice. It kind of felt like Carney was poking the bear a little bit. I thought they've done a decent job keeping the rhetoric very quiet on trade, whether you agree with it or not. I actually kind of do. I think keeping the temperature low, keeping the noise low when it comes to the president's a good thing. But I felt like this was kind of poking the president a little bit and saying, we're going to work around you. We're going to somehow have trade that, are we just going to ship it down to Mexico and not drive it through the United States?
Yeah, no, it's good. It's a good point. I mean, and you never know how the president is going to receive anything. The most innocuous comment can be turned into an attack that he will use.
Watch it, Jimmy Kimmel.
All right. Okay, Warren, you told us you're in British Columbia. You can look back there and you can see ships and boats and possibly ferries. The BC ferry deal it was a news story for a day that exploded into a mini scandal when we found out that what was a $1 billion loan was given to a Chinese company. I can't remember exactly what it was, but now our former transport minister, Chrystia Freeland, is going to be held to account for what happened. Talk to me about how you see it, Warren.
Well, yeah, very quickly on Chris's point about Freeland's appointment, I totally agree with him. I don't understand why she accepted that. But anyway, she's not the ambassador. She's some kind of special envoy to Ukraine now. And she's gotten out of the line of fire on this BC ferry story. Like, I've lived in BC. I can tell you, like, it's a beautiful province, one of the most beautiful places in the world. And ferries are a big, big deal here. Without a functioning ferry system, this province grinds to a halt. Yeah. And so I understood David Eby, the premier's desire to get, the ferries that he needed to keep his province running. And he wanted to do the deal with Canadian companies, and apparently none of them bid. They say that he set up the terms of reference so that they couldn't bid. It's hard to know what the truth is. But the one thing we do know is what the federal government was saying publicly was not how they were dealing with the story privately. Yeah. And, they were facilitating a deal that Freeland had condemned. It's just a bad look. Yeah. It's messy. It didn't need to be. But out here, I think probably people don't care. They just want to get the ferries, the ferry system running.
So Chris, by sending her off to Ukraine, she doesn't have to testify. Is that right?
Oh, I don't think it's that, Ben, as much as I think, into Warren's point about he's not sure why she took the position. I'm pretty confident I'm starting to get a clearer picture on why she took it. I think it very well might have been a situation where they looked at her and how bad she bungled this file and said, this might be the first person we give the boot out of cabinet to set an example. And so I think there was a very high likelihood that very bizarre position she took, unlike these high profile ones her colleagues were appointed to. I think this thing stinks to the high heavens. I get Warren's point completely that, the importance of the ferries to the British Columbia, economy. But that said, I think this deal, she's gone backwards. I mean, now this new, report out basically has her lying to the legislature.
We only have a short period of time left, so I want to get your take on where things stand in the United States with this Jimmy Kimmel thing. What are your thoughts? Was he censored? Did he step over a line? What are your high level thoughts on what transpired in the States? Warren, go first.
Well, I'll go first. You guys are conservatives. I'm not. Like, I thought conservatives believed in free speech. And like the Charlie Kirk's murder, his assassination was tragic and horrible. And, but what Jimmy Kimmel said, I didn't, it was comedy. He's a comedian. Maybe it was a little tasteless, but they didn't, they shouldn't have censored him.
Well, So he lied on the public airwaves. Like, that's to me the big.
How did he lie?
He said. How did he lie? He said in the setup to his joke, he said that the MAGA crowd is going to be working overtime to lie to you and tell you
to take advantage of his death.
No. That's not what he said. He said they're going to lie to you and tell you that the shooter wasn't one of their own. That was the setup to the joke. The jokes themselves, I actually laughed at the jokes.
Okay, so he deserves to be fired for that?
No.
He deserves to be taken off the air for that?
I didn't say that. I didn't say that. I said what I said is I personally find lying on the airwaves like that, the public airwaves, should have consequences. I don't know what those consequences are.
Well, I don't think it's a lie unless somebody can prove that he deliberately and willfully set out to tell a lie. Maybe it's just a mistake. But either way, like over on Fox, there's a guy saying, let's go shoot the homeless.
I know.
That SOB still got his job.
Correct.
So, I'm sorry, but the conservative establishment in the United States used to believe in free speech. They don't anymore. I'm not going to listen to conservatives talking to me about free speech anymore because it's all BS.
I didn't even have a chance to talk there, Warren, and neither did Chris, sadly. We didn't say anything. But anyway, thank you both for being here. We'll talk to you soon. Thanks so much for watching the show. Now, if you enjoyed what you saw, hit that subscribe button so you never miss the Mulroney Show.